Billboard dropped their best hip-hop albums. We talked about Apple's top 100 albums of all time earlier this summer. Let's take a look at Billboard's top hip-hop albums of all time in inverse or in decreasing order from 10 till 1. Coming in at number 10, we have The Great Adventures of Slick Rick. Mike, we were talking, you were mad at me for not counting everybody in, but when we were talking about this, I figured that this list, for those of you who hadn't seen it, would be a list that would be really, really agreeable for you, because there's a lot of albums out from your formative years, and Great Adventures of Slick Rick is one of those albums. Great storyteller.
Right there. I mean, that changed the game because Dougie, when they split up, when Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, obviously when they had the show, when they first came out, Slick Rick was part of Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew. But then Slick Rick broke off. And he had Children's Story. And he had
That's such a good song.
I remember that album coming out, dominating that entire summer. And it was, I want to say it was 89, somewhere around there, 89-ish when that came out. And that, Slick Rick everybody was on that. I don't know one critic of that.
Number 9, we have The Blueprint, Jay-Z, which is one of those type albums where, you got to have that on there.
Commercially, yes, you do, right? That's not my number one Jay-Z.
What's your number one Jay-Z?
And everybody has, Jay-Z provides enough talent and enough content for everybody. If you pull 5 people and say, what's your favorite Jay-Z, that'll probably get 3, if not, majority. But to me, The Life and Times of Sean Carter, Volume 2. Hard Knock Life. That was that was when Jay-Z was like, all right, I'm pretty good at this. I'm hungry. Now I'm about to go take over the industry. Then after that, everything was just great, but that was neighborhood Jay-Z. That was Marcy Projects Jay-Z, and that's the one I like.
Coming in at number 8, we have Paid in Full, Eric B. and Rakim, Mike.
You know how I feel about the R. You know how I feel about the R.
I do.
Man, when they came here for that throwback hip hop show, man, and R took the stage, man, you were there.
I was going to mention something about Slick Rick being there to see he and Dougie Fresh perform. And then this came up. Was like, yo, I saw Rakim also. And now I'm trying to think about how many of these artists have I seen the past year. Listen, as somebody, I just started going to concerts. I just started to. In fact, my first one I went to was 2016. And then after 2016, I didn't go to any until Music Fest 2018, right? So I'm not big into the concert scene. So I just started going. And I think I know at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 the past year.
Okay.
So that have made this list.
You're catching them in the twilight of their careers.
Seeing them come on stage, Mike.
Yeah. To me, and I'll pull back the curtain, man. The greatest rapper of all time to me, lyrically, is Rakim. He is the grandfather. He's the Frederick Douglass of the game. He's just the way he puts together stories versus metaphors versus absolutely rhyming. He's the guy. He's always been that guy. He's my number 1, man. So hey, I'm cool with that.
All right, coming in at number 6, we have Doggy Style, Snoop D-O-double-G. And it's crazy. I was talking with Evan Barnes on Twitter about this. Shout out to Evan Barnes up there in Brooklyn covering the Brooklyn Nets. And I need to call him and just catch up.
Former Commercial Appeal.
Commercial Appeal, covered Tigers football and did some Grizzly stuff as well. About how Snoop Dogg and Pitbull and other rappers, but specifically Snoop Dogg and Pitbull, how they've gone from being legit menaces. If you were a kid and you had a Snoop Dogg album in the 90s and your parents found out, you were in trouble. You were in trouble. So all of a sudden now, 20-some years later, 30-some years later, you look up and they're just pop culture characters that everybody loves. This is a great album also.
No doubt about it.
Great. I could listen to Doggy Style. You could listen to Doggy Style right now and, get turned, as the children would say.
Man, I remember I used to have discussions with Nick Van Exel, former NBA player, Grizzlies assistant coach. He's still in the league now. Nick Van Exel, man, swears by this Doggy Style.
Nick Van Exel is from out that way, correct?
No, he's from Milwaukee. He's from that area, but he spent his best years in the NBA with the Lakers. On those early teams.
I don't know why I thought he was LA kid.
He came out of Cincinnati. He was at University of Cincinnati when Doggy Style dropped. You know what I mean? And when that dropped, that was my college years. I was just getting to Grambling and Nothing But a G Thing, Ain't Nothing But a G Thing. Because of Grambling, we adopted Doggy Style. And just the album cover of that one was just so dramatic, man. But you ask, how can a guy like Snoop Dogg, and to a certain extent some other rappers that have been out all of this time, now you look at them, 50 Cent, you look at them all now.
Throw Jay-Z in there.
Jay-Z as well. But more so, see, Jay-Z is still kind of off the grid a little bit sometimes, but it's because they lived.
Yeah.
They matured, right?
Yeah.
Like who you were rapping at 19 has to be different when you're a grandfather now, right? Yeah. So now, you look at Snoop and Flavor Flav at the Olympics.
Flavor Flav is another one.
All three of them got records. All of them been to jail too. You know what I'm saying? And they lived long enough to live through it. But Doggy Style, man, yes, it deserves to be on that top 10 list.
Let these young people live. Give these young people guidance. Don't be so quick to come down. Drop the hammer on them. Coming in at number 5, we have All Eyes on Me, Tupac. Speaking of letting people live, I can't imagine. Is it 6? This is 5. Wait, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Coming at number 6. I'm sorry.
Kyra's never wrong.
Kyra is not wrong.
Yeah, she's never wrong.
I can't say philanthropies. I can't say that word. And also, I can't count. This is number 6, All Eyes on Me, Tupac. Speaking of letting people live, unfortunately, Pac was murdered on that Vegas Strip. And this album is, when people think about Tupac, I think they think about this album right here because it was great.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was his next to last one. It was his last living release.
Yeah, and
then they came back with Machiavelli after death. But my favorite one is All Eyes on Me. Just had everything. It had everything, and it's funny how it was a double album, and it's funny how when these dudes did double albums, especially Pac. This is the example. He went from teaming up with Dre on California Love. In the same album, dissing Dre, right? So it was like, okay, you just combine all of this in the one double album, man, and it was everything, man. It was everything. He had just gotten released from prison from jail, and he had all of that stuff written, and he was ready to go. I remember the studio stories where as soon as Tupac got out of jail, he went to the studio and just dropped 15 tracks without nothing written down, like just stuff that he already knew. And he just went in the studio and had marathon sessions, man, and he had to get it out. And that was All Eyes on Me.
I think that was where some of the frustration with Dre came in at, because Tupac was ready. And Dre's like, yo, Pac, we don't need to do all of this. We don't need to do all of this today. Like, we can go have a drink or two, can't we? Pac like, no. All right, as we look at the top 5 albums, top 5 hip-hop albums according to Billboard, coming in at Kyra, number 5. This is number 5. Coming in at number 5, Life After Death, the Notorious B.I.G., another one of those classic hip-hop albums.
It is. And you can argue Pac and Biggie and where they fall. It's going to be hard. And I saw the list. But when you look at this at number 5, it's going to be hard to find 4 more albums or releases that are greater than the last 2 that we just saw.
All right, number 4, we've got Aquemini, Outkast.
Man, talent-wise and content-wise and how they stretched themselves in that release right there, like they weren't just hip-hop. They used instruments and music, and they just did history. They combined all kind of genres. They had some jazz in there. They had some spoken word in there. And, like, man, this was they got in trouble, too, because of the
Rosa Parks.
The Rosa Parks song. And they described how the dynamic of that stereotype changed when it came to them. But a great album. That's my favorite Outkast album for sure.
Was this the one that was this their first mainstream one? Was this their first one? Okay. All right. So this was after the
Cadillac. Yeah.
This was after the South Got Something to Say.
So this was their third then.
Okay.
This was third. This was third.
Well, I mean, was this after the
Southern Player Cadillac music or whatever? That long word.
Yeah. Was this? I should have known this. Yeah. I knew this was coming up. Mm-hmm. Was this after they had that moment at the Source where people were booing them for winning Best New Artist?
Oh yeah, that was way after that. Yeah, all right. Yeah. This was the comeback.
We had accepted Outkast at this point.
Yeah, this was them. All right, so they went from Southern.
Yeah.
The first 2 albums. This one took them into like major corporate success, and like you knew, okay, that's when Andre 3000 became more like Prince, and he was trying different things, and then Big Boy was expanding on his game and all of that kind of stuff. They became superstars with Aquemini.
Saw Big Boy this year also. Coming in at whatever number this is, Kyra, number 3. we've got The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which was...
You saw her too.
I did see her.
Yeah.
So that's 4 this year. This was the best hip-hop rap album on the Apple Music albums list of all time. But it's coming in at number 3 here, Mike. And we talked about this when it came out. When that list came out for Apple. What are your thoughts on The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill?
When you look at the last 3 or 4 on this list, they all came out in the same sort of era, right? They were all from like 95, 6 to 98.
And that is, I think we can say, a golden era of rap.
Yeah.
And it's hard to leave those off. But this list really does like stop at 98. Like nothing past 98 is getting on this list.
And it's hard, man, because like Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, when you just break down what that album meant, what it took for her to get that album out, everything that the refugees were going through and everything she was going through personally in her life. And, you know, she never really lived up to the talent that she had. But this right here and her out, you know, her breakout, This Is Who I Am, like that album across any genre, and Apple proved it. That's one of the top albums ever. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill it's just as relevant in speaking to our young people today as it was 25, 30 years ago when it first came out, man, 20, whatever it is. And it's just, like I read The Miseducation of the Negro, the book.
Yeah.
Like the book and how she used the metaphor of the book to craft her album and what she was saying in those stories. It's a love story. It's a reality story. It's fighting against stereotypes. It's embracing stereotypes. Like it's everything that defines the culture, the African-American culture, then, now, and probably into the future.
Absolutely. And
if you made that argument that was if those were 1, 2, and 3, what we see up here, if that was 1, 2, and 3, I wouldn't have any argument at all with it.
But it's not number 2. Yeah. We have The Chronic, Dr. Dre, another one of those albums from around that time. And you think about Dre and his influence on Snoop and him and Tupac teaming up. You could say Dre's got like 3 albums on here, which is incredible to think about one artist with that type of influence.
Yes, Quincy Jones of hip hop, man, is Dr. Dre, and the Chronic set the tone for the West being back, right? Like the West had NWA initially, and then like Dre. At that point, like when you listen to it, and I recently listened to it I was doing a workout, and I had that on, and every single song took me back to the moment when I first heard it. He could never top it. That's why when everyone was waiting on, you know, the follow up to The Chronic, he still hasn't put it out like in full. So that right there introduced Snoop. You had some all of Death Row on there. You also had what's my man name? The DOC. You know what I mean? Eminem came from out of that, and then from Eminem came 50 Cent. So it was like the evolution of what Dre touched and what he has, like he touched everything, man. And that album spoke for itself right there.
And coming in at number 1 on the top 10 greatest rap albums according to Billboard. This is according to Billboard. Coming in at number 1, Illmatic, Nas.
If I had to go Rakim gets my vote all time, right? Just because like Rakim was my introduction to like straight just standing on your sitting on your porch and just rapping, right?
Yeah.
But he has a lot, like Nas has a lot of that Rakim in him too, because Nas is sort of like J. Cole. Like you can put him in any era and he'll find a way to be effective and speak to what he needs to speak to. He still is putting out music to this day.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been my number 1. But
what would have been your number 1?
My number 1 probably would have been. See, I'm partial to Lauryn Hill because of what that album meant, right? And what it meant. I wouldn't have put Nas up there. Nas would have been in my top 6. He wouldn't have been number 1. I wouldn't have put him ahead of any of those 4 that we see on the screen right there.
Okay.
But he deserves a shot to be in there though.
Yeah. Greatest
diss track ever was the one when he ripped off on Jay-Z. Like that was great. That was the greatest diss track ever. When he ethered Jay-Z. And you don't see guys taking on until we had this Kendrick and Drake thing. But that was, even then, like those 2 guys, even Drake and Kendrick, they're more commercialized success now. But this is when it was just about getting in the studio and saying, dude, you ain't who you saying you are. And I knew you win.
Yeah. You used to sleep on my couch.
Man, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, I love the list. I would have had Ice Cube in there. I would have had Ice Cube in there.
America's Most Wanted?
No. I would have had Death Certificate.
Okay.
In there for Ice Cube because his double album, Death Certificate, changed the whole game. Like, to me, it was like, it was his confessional to what went wrong with NWA. It was, I'm going to jump out here and do my thing on my own. It was after Kill at Will, and he found his own. And then he combined with a whole lot of guys. He brought the East and the West together on that. And it was the life side, it was the death side, but Ice Cube would have been up there in that top 10 for me. But I love that list, man, because you're right, it's bias.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody, coming from a new generation might be like, man, I don't know how that list could be top 10 of all time when you don't have a Kendrick Lamar, or you don't have a Drake, or you don't have somebody new age, or J. Cole or whatever. But to me, I don't have any problems at all with that list. I love it. It's
hard to...
Eminem probably deserve to be considered in there too.
It's hard. I have Marshall Mathers LP.
Yeah.
You say, CJ, what do you think? I would say, what do you think about the list? Hey, it's 2-1 era-ish for me.
I got you.
All right, CJ, great. Take an album out. No. No. No.